told Mother that I would send a tape, and I am sending a tape. And if you are hearing this, I assume you figured out how to use your recorder and radio system. So what's new? Not much new with me. Let me see, what can I tell you about me? I made it to the ship, as you can hear. I haven't received any packages. I don't know if they're lost or if they're just taking a long time, but I don't have them yet. You want to hear about my adventure? First, I got to tell you one thing. It's 8:20 in the morning, the 7th of February, Friday. We've been at sea about a week now. The clicking sound you've just heard was me lighting a cigarette. Okay, now from the beginning. When I left and caught the bus, I went to Norfolk, and when I got there, I checked in. Well, I didn't check in. I went down to the Y to change in the uniform so I could report aboard in the proper uniform. Well, that I did. I changed. I called a cab, and $5 later, I pulled up to the naval base. And as the driver went through the area, he got within, I'd say 200 yards of the ship. And there it was sitting there, big and ugly. And there I was in the cab. And I looked at the ship, and I looked at the driver, and I said, I don't want to go. So I had a brilliant idea. Something looked funny about the ship. So I stopped a guy that was walking down the street before I got out of the cab, and I said, Guy, when is this ship getting underway? And the guy said, well, it's getting underway tomorrow at 10 a.m., which is 10:00 in case Dad or Frankie's there. And I said, but I called 2 weeks ago, and they said they were getting underway at 10 a.m. a day later than that. And they said, no, they changed the schedule. Well, 10 a.m. happened to be the same day that I had to check in, but I didn't have to be there until 2400 hours, midnight. So I said, driver, guess what? And he said, what? And I said, I'm not going, because I don't have to. So I told driver, turn around, and $5.50 later, I arrived at the motel and checked in. You see, since I didn't have to be there until midnight, and the ship was leaving at 10 a.m., if I wasn't there when it left, it was perfectly legal, which I thought would give me, about 45 days in Norfolk. Well, as it turned out, I didn't get 45 days in Norfolk. I got 4 days in Norfolk. After 4 days, after 3 days, I decided that I was lonely for someone, so I called someone, Linda Ray. And I said, I got my master charge, and I got lots of time, and a long weekend. I said, jump on an airplane, come and see me. She said, okay. So I had the tickets radioed to her, or teletyped to her rather, and she was going to come and see me. Well, that Thursday rather, the day before she was supposed to come, I had duty. And of all things, I got stuck with a watch in the old waves barracks. Well, I was there all night, all by myself, and I was scared because it was dark and spooky. Anyway, I went all over the place. It had 3 floors in it, and I went into the lady's head. That's the potty for you civilians, just to see what a lady's potty looked like, since it was empty. See, there wasn't anybody there except me. And I looked on the walls, and there was writing on the wall, just like in the men's head. I thought that was cute. It said, Johnny loves Sue, and Sue loves Johnny. Betty loves Mike, and Mike loves Betty. Susan loves Michael, and Tommy, and John, and Paul, and Richard. Well, anyway, I went through all that. And when my watch was over and my relief came, he said, guess what? I said, what? And he said, you're checking out. I said, checking out? He said, yeah. And I said, when? He said, today. I said, but my girl's coming today. And he said, you gotta check out today. I said, who told you that? And he said, the captain, and the captain's always right. So, I went up to the personnel and I said, personnel, am I checking out? And they said, yes. And I said, when do I have to be in Norfolk? And they said, tonight. I said, wrong. And there was a girl, wave. And she said, what do you mean wrong? And I said, I don't have to go tonight. I didn't have to go, see, because I'm supposed to have 2 days travel time. So, as the story goes, I didn't go. I got 2 days travel time, so I decided, I called Linda and told her, go ahead and come. So she went ahead and come. Let me see. That evening, well, that afternoon, I went to the airport to radio the tickets ahead. And I radioed them ahead, and I'd been up all night, as I said. So I said, I'll get the room now and go take a rest. It didn't work out too good. I went to take a rest. By the way, there's nobody around here, and I could sound crazy, you know. If there was someone around, I couldn't. They're having general quarters, and my station's in the print shop because I'm in charge, and nobody can bother me because I got all the doors locked, and they've set condition zebra, which means nothing to you, of course. Anyway, where was I? Oh, yes. No, that wasn't where I was. Oh, yeah. I radioed the tickets, and I got the room, and I went over, and I got my alarm clock out, and I set it for 4 because she was coming in at 5, and I laid down to rest just for a minute. I woke up at midnight. Oh, poor Linda. She wasn't anywhere. I jumped out of bed, and I put my pants on, my uniform pants, and my white shirt, and I didn't even button it. And off I went, running. See, the motel was right across from the airport. And I ran across and ran into the airport. And I said, where is she? Where is she? Everybody, where is she? And everybody said, who? And I said, Linda Ray, you know who? They said, we don't know who. And I ran around and asked everybody, and finally I ran to this guard, and I said, have you seen a blonde? And he said, and I said, someone's seen a blonde. She's not here, and she came to see me, and I slept in, and it's midnight, and the poor girl's lost in the big city, and it's not quite Kent, you know. So, finally the guard said, oh, I said, guard, you got a radio? He says, yeah, I got a radio. I said, why don't you radio down to wherever your main thingy is and find out if anybody's seen a blonde? He said, well, that is a good idea. Yeah. So he tried it. He said, calling main station, have anybody seen a blonde? And some woman answers, yes, we did. She went over to the motel. So, I went running over to the motel, and well, before I ran over, they said, who's looking for her? And I said, me. And they gave me the room number. So I went running over there, and lo and behold, she checked in next door to me. Didn't even know she was there. She didn't know I was there. So I beat on her door, and I beat her on the door, and she says, who is it? Who is it? Because she was scared, you see. And I said, it's me. Only me from over the sea, said Barnacle Bill the sailor. Yes. And she let me in, and we hugged and kissed, and she was crying, and got a happy ending, see. Then. Okay, then we had a good time. And I took her back to the airport because her flight was before mine. She got on the airplane at noon, and I got on at 3 o'clock, and I went to Mayport to find the ship. Well, on the way to Mayport, I ran into his Master Chief, and he said, guess what? I said, what? He said, the ship isn't in yet. I said, huh? He said, yep, the ship isn't in yet. Won't be in for about 5 days. I said, well, he's sending me to Mayport. The ship won't be in for 5 days. He said, I don't know. Well, they're sending me to Mayport. The ship won't be in 5 days. Well, we got there, and they sent us over to the Mayport barracks, and we checked in there and called that home. And I went out and got half drunk because I needed it, because I was so confused and tired, and I winked at a girl and everything. Well, after all that, we stayed there over the weekend, two days. And they said, guess what? I said, what? They said, you're going over to Jacksonville, Florida. I said, Jacksonville, Florida? He said, yep. Well, that's about 30 miles from Mayport, see. I said, okay. So they sent us over to Naval Air Station, Jacksonville. And we checked in there, and they said, we don't want you. You should go back to Mayport. I said, I'm not going. We had 22 guys all together trying to get the ship. I just heard a strange noise. I was trying to peek and see what it was. I don't see anybody. Huh? Okay. Where was I? Oh yeah, Jacksonville. So I checked in there and I stayed, well, I thought I was going to stay one day and they were going to fly us to the ship, right? On a COD, which is an aircraft that's handled by the ship. And they put you in the airplane and you fly over the ocean and the airplane lands on the ship. And a sudden stop, you know, and your teeth fall out. But anyway, they needed 19, they had room for 19 guys. And guess who didn't go? Got out of that one. Well, the day the ship finally did pull in, I didn't want to take all those buses and carry my luggage anymore, and I was so tired of it. So I called operations, and I said, operations? And they said, yes. And I said, I want a helicopter. And they said, who are you? And I said, I'm not much of anybody. I just hoping I could get a helicopter. And they said, well, you got the nerve to ask for a helicopter. We're going to give you a helicopter. So they gave me a helicopter. I went over and I jumped in the helicopter and it went flying in the sky, and I never flew in a helicopter, but it was fun. And I landed in the Mayport at the airport, and I got out and I said, hello airport, and they said hello, and I said, I want a truck. And they said, who are you? I said, nobody. And they said, well, you got the nerve to ask for a truck, we'll give you a truck. And they took me to the ship, and I watched the ship tie up, and I went aboard, and here I am, your local Navy lithographer. That's my sea story. Okay, now for my print shop. I walked into the shop and it was in the worst condition I ever saw a print shop in my life. Terrible. 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 Anyway, after I got in here, I looked around and I couldn't believe it, see. So I checked around with all the personnel and everything, and I found out the two bosses before me were fired because they had so much trouble with their print shop, see. This is #1 sore spot for our ship. So, I know that, I knew right away that it was a bad thing. World of trouble, you know. But I started thinking, well, a shop as bad as this and such a great leader as me, if I square it away at all, I've got to look good, right? So I grabbed my 8 men and I said, 8 men, you are going to make this shop pretty. And they looked at each other and started saying, you could see that they think, uh-oh, we got a meanie for a boss this time after all this slack for 2 years and nobody's been mean to us. And before they could say it, I said, guys, you have a meanie for a boss this time, and after 2 years of slack, I'm going to be mean to you. But actually, they are a bunch of good workers. I haven't had any problems with them, except yesterday I had to go to court with one, what we call captain's mast, because he got caught smoking pot, and that's a bad thing. He got busted, and the boss before had to go too, and he got busted, and I had a locker inspection down here that very day and checked everything and smelled everything and tasted everything and looked at everything, and I can't find any down here. So if I catch anybody, I'm going to have to hang them by their gonads. And for those who don't know what gonads is, I'm not telling. Anyway, I've got 5-gallon cans of paint down here and big swabs, mops for you civilians, and brushes and cleaning things, and everybody has been scrubbing and cleaning and painting, and it's starting to look like a print shop. And after the first day down here, guess what? There hasn't been an officer down here to check yet, because they know I know what I'm doing. See? Do I seem like such a meanie? Your dear little son and brother? Do I look like such a meanie? Well, if I got to be, I guess I got to be. It's starting to look good. I don't like it here. This ship is ooky because I don't like it much, and it's big and ugly, and I don't like it. I got a television down here, would you believe? Closed circuit TV, somebody sends in videotape of all the movies and everything just a day late, you know, and you see all the programs you guys see just a day later. And on the special channel, you know what you can do? You can watch the airplanes landing on the flight deck. You don't even have to go up there in the weather. You just sit here and watch them landing and taking off and missing the flight deck and that kind of stuff. Over.
This book is dedicated to Jessica Fawn Fugate, daughter of Steve Edward Fugate, and to Paul Jesse Edward Reese. Paul and Steve being the sons of Edward Clifton Reese, myself. Who is the son of George Edward Reese, the son of Irving Clifton Reese, the son of William Wesley Reese, the son of Isaac Reese, the son of Eli, the son of Isaac, the son of Thomas, the son of Isaac, and the son of Thomas, who came over from Wales around 1687. Sylvania Township, settlement of the township in 1828, some early residents, its growth, first church, etc. Elections in February 1890, village of Costello. Sylvania Township, north of Wharton and east of Portage, finds the Cinnamohoning increasing in size among its grim forests. Above and at Costello, the first fork, the South Fork, and Freeman's Fork of this creek flow together. The county is rich in material for the student of natural history, while the borough of Austin and the town of Costello afford subject to the student of enterprise and progress. North of Costello, the large boulders, farther away, the red shale, and in the northeast corner, gray shale and gray sandstone, and the regular dip of the rocks northwest and southwest from the center make the township a book which the student must walk to read. The population in 1880 was 214. In 1888, there were 59 Republicans, 61 Democrat, and 16 United Labor votes cast, representing 680 inhabitants, while in 1889 the number of taxpayers was 211, and value of property $82,415. This township was assessed in 1857-58 by A.C. Scoville, who found here E.O. Austin, Andrew, William and Chester Burleson, John Brownlee, Thomas, Hugh and Ben Booth, Joseph Baker, William Carson, Washington Clinton, McReady Earl, Eli James and John Glaspie, T. Gerhardt, Joe Hall, William and Pardon Haskins, Franklin and Betty Holiday, C.W. Eyes, William and T.M. Keeler, Henry Knickerbocker, James Logue, A.G. Olmsted, Louis Payne, Chester and Elijah Prouty, James, Isaac, and C.C. Reese, A.C. Scoville, T.L. Tully, John Van Etter, Charles and Isaac Wyckoff, and R.H. Young. William Carson, with others, moved upon the Upper Cinnamohoning in 1836. He was a millwright and built a small log grist mill above the mouth of Freeman's Run at the upper end of the Costello Tannery in Sylvania. The old mill, a block or log building, was in existence until recent history. The Webb colony referred to in the history of Costello settled here in 1835-1836. In 1838, Eli Reese and John Glaspie moved from Philadelphia into the forest, what is now the township of Sylvania, near the forks of the first fork of Cinnamohoning, at the place now known as Reese Settlement. They came into the country, or rather the county, by the way of the Jersey Shore, and as there were no roads after leaving the turnpike, they were obliged to chop their way through the woods. Their nearest neighbor, John Nelson, lived 5 miles south, and in the other direction, George Ayres on Ayres Hill was their nearest neighbor, 9 miles distant. The children of Eli Jr., Columbus, James, Isaac, Thomas, and Miller, daughter Mary Ann, Mrs. Glaspie, and Hannah, Mrs. Corey. The children of John Glaspie were James, Edward Miller, Eli, Elizabeth, Mrs. Wheeler, and Mary, or Mrs. Logue. Eli Reese Jr., while county treasurer, was accidentally shot and killed by D.D. Reed in 1859. Just my note, there's some controversy about that. Eli Reese Sr. came here as an agent for Webb Land, receiving for himself 400 acres. He laid out a village plot where the tannery town called Costello now stands. Every man who bought a farm received a deed. The village refused to grow until many years after, when manufacturing interests gave it a push. Within 2 or 3 years after the arrival of Reese and Glaspie, Chester Prouty came into the county. The first blacksmith was Isaac Reese. Another note from me, he's the one I'm a direct descendant of. He is still living at the advanced age of 77 years. At least he was at the time of this publication. Those passing the estate of Columbus C. Reese, to whom we are indebted for much useful information, will notice a large pine standing in one corner of the lot which his house is built, near the creek. This Mr. Reese set out when he was a boy, first in the garden, but at his father's suggestion, he transplanted it to a present position. Benjamin Barfield informs us that at this time his father was living down the stream. Remembers his father camping out with 2 Indians, where the camp meeting ground is now, while hunting, and also remembers lying awake when a small boy until 1 o'clock in the morning, listening for the report of his father's gun, who was lying in wait for a bear that had killed the sheep. The bear, when brought in, tipped the scales at 400 pounds. In 1835, the first church was organized in Sylvania. Methodist, Episcopal, and Cree. Reverend Butt and Reverend Gregg preached alternately once every 4 weeks at the house of Eli Reese. Eli Reese Sr., that is. But the first prayer meeting was held years before by Isaac Reese in William Crosby's log house, near where the church stands now. Isaac held services in the house of Whittle Hamilton and formed a class of 6 or 7 members. Isaac Reese was appointed class leader and used to walk 8 miles on Sunday to meet with his class. Isaac Reese learned the gunsmith trade in West Philadelphia, but on coming to the colony, he became a blacksmith. The first schoolhouse in Sylvania Township was built by David Wilson for the landowner, Samuel Webb. In 1838, Isaac Reese taught the first school. The first grist mill in Sylvania was built by William Carson for Samuel Webb in 1839. There was no hotel until 1861 when one was opened by William Burleson. The previous reading was from the history of McKean, Elk, Cameron, and Potter Counties, Pennsylvania by I.H. Bears and Company. Pioneer Days. Settlement of Sylvania Township by Reese Family and their neighbor. This township was named by J. Miller Reese, the youngest son of the pioneers, Eli and Elizabeth Reese, who came from Chester, near Philadelphia, with a family of 6 sons, 2 daughters, and a son-in-law. My note again, since then I've discovered that they actually came from East Goshen Township. The family of 11 pioneers by a long and weary route from Chester, just how I am not able to tell, as now it would be such a short and easy trip from Philadelphia to Reeseville. But we remember of hearing them tell of coming by boat, then with teams, and in conclusion to the Allegheny River, following the old turnpike up and over Ayers Hill, down into the Cinnamahoney Valley, where they stopped to make a home. Then, in the dense forest, they built for themselves a log house in a pretty shallow place, in the Cinnamahoney stream, which is sometimes a creek and at other times a river. The place is now known as the Frank Reese Farm, and the log house, all that is left of it, still stands, way back by a cold spring. An occupied frame house, which was built many years ago, still stands and is occupied by Frank Reese, who is worthy of the pioneer homestead. The son of the pioneer Reese family, the sons rather, were Eli, Thomas, Columbus, Isaac, James, and Miller. The sons of Isaac married the sons of Isaac and Mary Ann Nelson of the lower Sinmahoning Valley, and to them were born Martin J. Wesley, who served in the Civil War, Elizabeth A. Harriet, who spent her younger days with her aunt Harriet at Coudersport, Nancy A., Mary E., Henry N., and David. Isaac settled near his father in the north and had a little blacksmith shop. Columbus married Ann Hall of Philadelphia and settled near his father on the south and operated a sawmill. Their children were Emmeline, George C., Dr. Reese, Adelaide, Sophia, and Anne, who was a victim of the diphtheria. Elizabeth, Lillian, and Charles. That's Chrissy, sorry. Thomas M. married Caroline Strong, daughter of Luther Strong, who built the first grist mill at Coudersport and a carding machine. Their children were Sarah J., who died when 8 years old, Bernie T., Mary A., Eli, Cynthia R. By the way, Cynthia R. is the one, I believe, Cynthia Reese Westfall, who wrote this. Arthur S., Oscar A., George W., Lena, who died in infancy, Effie, and I believe Effie is the one who wrote the Reese genealogy around the turn of the century. Elmer H., who was born in Civil War times, Stephana A., and Chauncey V. J. Miller Reese married Emma Hall, sister of Columbus's wife. They were the daughters of a widow Hall who, with her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Hewitt, and her 3 children, Joseph, Ann, Emma, again, J. Miller Reese married Emma Hall, sister of Columbus's wife. They were the daughters of Widow Hall, who with her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Hewitt, and her 3 children, Joseph, Ann, and Emma, came from Philadelphia. To Miller and wife were born Rosella, William M., Jane, Christopher C., Bina, Bird, Alfred, and Elvin. James, the last one to marry, took for his wife Margaret Younglove, whose parents came from Andover and located in Moore's Run. Their children were William, Sam, I believe, Frank, Charles, Ellis, and Elma. Mary A.'s husband, John Gillespie, came with them. To them were born James, Elizabeth, Eli, Rosanna, Edward, Hannah, and Mary. Hannah M. married Azrael Corey. To them were born Asa R., Lithia, that's Lithia E., Benjamin R., and Mary A. All these settled or located in Sylvania Township the whole Reese family except one son. Eli Reese Jr. married Harriet Jackson of Ayers Hill and located in Coudersport. He was, I believe, a carpenter, or rather a cabinet maker. To them were born Orlando J., Osmond, Mary, Burton, and Charles. While Charles was still a small boy, his father was accidentally shot and killed by Mr. Reed, who worked for him and who was with him looking at a coal bed down the Allegheny River. Well, it was Sylvania Township I was telling about, so you see the inhabitants were mostly Reeses. In the mood of retrospect, we feel like singing. I don't feel like singing, I'll recite it. Backward, turn backward, O time, in thy flight, and make me a child again just for tonight, etc. Then we remember that we must not look backward, but press forward toward the goal. Then we sing, with eyes ever open and tongue that's not dumb, and heart that to sorrow will never succumb. Well, onward and conquer, though thousands assail, how strong and how mighty, who never say fail. This is written by Cynthia Reese Westfall. In memoriam of those who rest and dream of sleep in Reese Cemetery. Journal, July 7, 1909. A paper prepared and read by Mrs. Cartha C. Gillespie at the memorial services of the Reese family and others held at the Reese Schoolhouse Sunday afternoon, June 27, 1909, published by request of some present. Dear relatives and friends, we are assembled here today, as I understand it, to pay a tribute of respect to the dear ones gone on before, and a word of counsel and encouragement to those who are still with us. While we are young, we are looking forward to the future, and our hearts are full of ambition and longings for the things and possibilities that hope presents to our mind's eye, of happenings and enjoyment in days to come. But as the order of youth passes gradually away, we find our minds more frequently turning back to the incidents and friends of past days. And so in many of the lonely moments of the last 10 years, as I have sat by my window or on the porch thinking of the dear ones that it seems were so lately with us that I could almost feel they were still here. As I turned my eyes up the creek, could almost imagine I see the kind and smiling face of Sister Lizzie coming down the lane, or the kind and genial Aunt Margaret with her cheerful words and helping hands, or from another direction, Sister Hannah Ann, who was sometimes of a more despondent temperament, seemed to call for sympathy and kind words from us, a good, accommodating friend and neighbor, a tender, loving mother. Then, dear Aunt Caroline would seem to come slipping along